Randy Rhoads didn't only revolutionize how people play guitar, he made up new rules. I believed he wouldn't be around for long when I first met him. I have no idea why I thought that or anything. But his stratospheric career came to an end in one of rock's most devastating tragedies. And now, more than 40 years later, new theories and troubling clues are finally helping to make sense of it all. Was it just a dangerous joyride, a terrible accident, or something much worse? Because what is coming out doesn't merely go against the official story. It could show something more sinister. You already know that there's more to this tale than what you see in the news. You've heard the news. You've seen the rumors. Now, we're going to look more closely at what really happened that morning in Florida and why so many people still don't believe it was just a fluke crash. The catastrophe that transformed rock music for good. At 10 a.m. sharp. On the 19th of March, 1982. A tragedy happened that will rock the music world. A Beechcraft Bonanza F-35, a small plane, crashed in Leesburg, Florida, with 36-year-old Andrew Aycock at the controls. Randy Rhoads, a 25-year-old guitar virtuoso, and Rachel Youngblood, a 58-year-old seamstress for the tour, were on board. The flight only lasted 5 minutes. The plane's wing hit Ozzy Osbourne's tour bus, then it spiraled out of control, hit a pine tree, and crashed into a garage nearby. The explosion was so powerful that it killed all 3 passengers right away. It was a heartbreaking loss that took the life of one of rock's most promising and influential performers too soon. That morning, the band had stopped at Flying Baron Estates to fix the broken air conditioning in the tour bus. It was supposed to be a short break before they went to their next show. But instead of a place to relax, it became the site of one of rock's most famous and strange accidents. Aycock, who wasn't merely the band's bus driver, was flying the plane, which had been seized without permission. He was also a certified pilot whose medical certification had run out. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, said that what transpired next was due to bad judgment. They said in their report that ACOC had taken the plane for a joyride and tried to wake up the crew by flying low over the sleeping tour bus several times as a joke. But on the 3rd try, something went very, very wrong. The plane hit the bus's roof, causing the left wing to break off. This made the plane turn sharply, and its nose crashed right into a garage. It blew up when it hit. There was a lot of fire in the region. Later, many who were there, such keyboardist Don Air and bassist Rudy Sarzo, would say that the situation looked like the end of the world. Sarzo stated it looked like a battlefield. Parts of the body were all over the place. The skies were black with smoke. In the middle of it all were the burning remnants of the house, the plane, and any prospect of saving the people inside. But this is where the narrative starts to get really scary. The official reports say that the event was a dangerous stunt that went wrong. But that story doesn't explain a number of strange, even scary, things that eyewitnesses and bandmates have said. For a long time, many people who work for the NTSB have said that their explanation only provides part of the tale. Don Air, who was outside the bus taking pictures of the plane with a telephoto lens, said that the jet wasn't simply flying low, it was having trouble. He said he could see something going on in the cockpit, the wings swinging back and forth, and the plane almost sliding sideways at one point, only 6 feet off the ground. Air stopped snapping pictures just before the crash because she felt something was horribly wrong. There were others like him. The part that stuck with me the most? Randy Rhoads didn't want to be on that plane at all. Randy has always hated being in the air. He stayed away from it as much as he could. So why did he agree this time? People who knew Randy said he simply consented to go up in the air to capture some pictures of the estate for his mother. She had always been there for his music career. It was meant to be a quiet flight and nothing else. Rachel also had her reservations. She told Aycock that she had a cardiac problem. Reports say that Aycock pledged not to do any stunts or sudden drops. It was supposed to be a brief trip around the property. Just a few circles in the sky, nothing scary. But several people who work for the NTSB think that their version doesn't go far enough. What do they mean by that? Randy Rhoads' last hours were like any other day on tour. A jumble of travel, tiredness, and excitement for what was coming next. After finishing a gig in Knoxville, Tennessee, on the night of March 18, 1982, Ozzy Osbourne's band got on their tour bus and drove all night to their next stop. They were on their way to Orlando, Florida, but the bus's air conditioning broke down early on March 19. The choice was made to make a quick stop at Flying Baron Estates near Leesburg, which is a private air park where the bus company's main office was. It was supposed to be a quick halt for maintenance and rest before moving on. Instead, it would serve as the setting for one of rock music's most terrible and confusing tragedies. Flying Baron Estates was not like any other neighborhood. The neighborhood was developed around private runways, and people parked their planes in hangars in their backyards. The band groggy parked their tour bus here after a long night of travel, while most of the crew stayed asleep. Andrew Aycock, the band's tour bus driver and a certified pilot, chose to fly as the sun came up. Aycock had access to a Beechcraft Bonanza F-35 that was parked on the property, even though he wasn't scheduled or allowed to fly. After that, a series of judgments were made that still don't make sense. Around 9 a.m., Aycock left for his first joyride of the day with tour manager Jake Duncan and musician Don Airey. Duncan and Airey say the vibe was light. Aycock flew low, buzzed the bus on purpose to wake up the crew inside, and then came back safely. People who were watching from below said they found the stunt funny. But like with a lot of dangerous thrills, one successful stunt typically leads to another, and this time the risk would be deadly. Aycock asked Rachel Youngblood, the band's 58-year-old seamstress, and Randy Rhoads to come along on the second flight. Both were recognized for not taking risks that weren't necessary. Rachel had a heart problem and had said before that she didn't want to fly. Randy was also well known for being frightened of flying. He had often chosen to stay on the ground instead of taking short flights. But one morning, he agreed not to go after a thrill and instead to snap some pictures of the estate from the air for his mother. Aycock claimed again that the flight will be calm. There were no loops or dives, just a few leisurely passes for a few pictures. It didn't sound dangerous. The jet took off just before 10 a.m. Many people on the ground thought at first that it would go the same way as the first trip. From what happened next was anything from normal. Don Airey, who was outside the bus shooting pictures of the aircraft, quickly realized that something was wrong. He witnessed a peculiar ruckus in the cockpit with his telescopic lens. The wings of the plane were shaking back and forth more fiercely than previously. It wasn't fun. It looked scared. Then something terrible happened. The left wing of the Beechcraft hit the roof of the bus on the third low pass. The hit ripped the wing off the fuselage, causing the plane to spin out of control. In just a few seconds, it hit a pine tree and then dove into a garage next to a mansion. The blast happened right away. There were flames and black smoke all around the crash scene. People who ran from the bus to aid saw a sight of destruction that was hard to believe. There were no people who lived. But this is the bit that most people don't talk about. Randy wasn't meant to be the only one on that flight at first. Rudy Sarzo, Ozzy's bassist and a close friend of Randy's, had also been asked to go up that morning. On tour, the two did everything together, from late-night adventures to sightseeing to flying trips. But on this day, Rudy said no. He was tired and it was meant to be a day off. He said no to going with Randy this time. He would always regret that choice. Later, Rudy would explain that he didn't have any bad feelings, just tiredness. But his decision to sleep in saved him from the flames. He thinks that fate made that choice for him. And in a terrible twist, his absence may have allowed Randy to get on the airplane, which he might not have done otherwise. But Randy wasn't the only person who almost got on that plane. What saved Rudy Sarzo may have sealed Randy's doom. The choice that kept Rudy Sarzo up at night. The tiniest decisions can sometimes have the biggest effects. Rudy Sarzo, Ozzy Osbourne's bassist and one of Randy Rhoads' best friends, made a choice that still affects him more than 40 years later. On the morning of March 19, 1982, Rudy was given a seat on a small plane that was about to take off for a fast low pass around the tour bus. He would have answered yes right away if it weren't for the fact that he was tired. On tour, he and Randy did almost everything together, from eating to taking unplanned side trips. But that morning, for reasons he still can't explain, Rudy said no. The day was meant to be off. He was tired after a lengthy stretch of shows and travel. It only felt natural to stay behind and grab a few more hours of sleep. At the time, it was a rare chance to treat himself, but in less than an hour, that choice would have a weight he never thought it would. The jet he was supposed to get on, which was carrying Randy Rhoads and Rachel Youngblood, crashed in a massive explosion after hitting the tour bus. All 3 people on board died right away, leaving Rudy Sarzo safe but broken. Rudy would talk a lot and honestly about the survivor's guilt that ate away at him in the years that followed. He said that when he woke up, he heard the explosion and ran out from the bus. He saw his tour manager yelling, "They're gone. They are all gone." Rudy didn't know who was on board at first. When he found out it was his musical brother Randy, it felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. "That day, the moment that changed my life forever," he called. And even though a lot of time has passed, the sadness never went away. Rudy, on the other hand, doesn't think Randy died for nothing. He said that the way the crash happened makes it seem like Randy did something in his last moments. Rudy is sure that Randy helped the doomed airliner avoid the tour bus, which may have saved the lives of everyone on board. The wing of the Beechcraft hit the bus roof, but it didn't go through it or hit it directly. Rudy thinks that if the plane had gone even a few feet lower, it would have hit the whole side of the bus and killed everyone inside. He has said that Randy saved us. I'm 1,000% sure. This notion isn't merely a way to deal with your feelings. It's based on the weird way the crash happened. The bus didn't get too much damage. The impact was strong enough to break off a wing, but it didn't hurt the people inside who were asleep. It is a scary picture. Randy understood that the crash was going to happen, trying to steer the plane away from his bandmates. If true, it was his last act, one of instinct, bravery, and putting others first. Eyewitness Don Airy provided a distressing visual detail that backs up the assumption that something was extremely wrong within the plane. Airy had his camera out and was using a telephoto lens to take close-up pictures of the cockpit. What he observed wasn't a peaceful ride. It was a mess. He said that the wings were flipping all over the place and the plane was shaking like it was being battled over. Airy said there was a fight. There was something going on in there. The plane tilted almost straight up just before it hit. It wasn't just a stunt that went wrong. It appeared like someone had lost control or was trying hard to get it back. That makes me think of some scary things. What was different about the second flight if a cock had already flown a smooth round that morning? Randy didn't want to go up. Rachel had a problem with her heart. People say a cock was out partying the night before. And within that small cockpit, something went very wrong. So what caused the pandemonium in the cockpit if Randy didn't want to fly and ICOC had already flown once? The idea of Bob Daisley. The official story behind Randy Rhoads' death has not changed much in the years since he died, but former Ozzy Osbourne bassist Bob Daisley came up with a notion that changed everything. Daisley says that the disaster might not have been caused by the pilot being careless or high on cocaine. Instead, he thinks that something more worse and more unforeseeable caused the disaster. A heart attack while flying. And it wasn't just any heart attack, it was one that Rachel Youngblood, the band's beloved seamstress, had. She was one of the 3 women on that doomed trip. Daisley talked about this idea on an episode of the Talk Louder podcast, and it quickly spread around the rock world. He said that the Beechcraft Bonanza F-35 had a dual control plane, which meant that both front seats could reach the yoke and pedals. Aycock could have lost control of the plane if Rachel, who was sitting next to him, had a heart attack and fell over unexpectedly. If she stomped on the rudder or yoke, even by accident, it may have made the plane dive in a way that was not planned and killed her. The V-tail configuration of the plane they were flying is known to make it hard to keep stable while it spins. Daisley thinks that the pilot might not have been able to recover in time. And here's the devastating piece of evidence that backs up his theory. Rachel is said to have not wanted to go on that plane. She had told the staff about her cardiac problem. That morning, she told Aycock that she wasn't feeling well and that flying wasn't a good idea. Aycock, who had already taken Don Air and Jake Duncan on a low, showboating flight, is said to have promised to be nice to her. He is said to have told her that there will be no stunts, just a calm loop or two. She may have thought it was safe since he kept telling her it was, and because Randy decided to go up and snap pictures from the air. But those few minutes in the air might have been too much. Daisley said that the autopsy showed that Rachel had a heart attack before the crash. People weren't just talking about it. It was a fact in medicine. If this is true, this minor but terrible event may have made the cockpit so chaotic that no pilot, even a sober and trained one, could have handled it. A cock, who was sitting next to her, might have panicked or made things worse. The plane was already flying low, with not much height to spare. The plane began spiraling down in seconds, hitting a bus, a pine tree, and then falling into a garage nearby. Daisley's theory adds an unexpected and very sad aspect to the story, but it also makes people wonder. For one thing, it makes Aycock look like a victim of circumstances instead of the careless evil that many people thought he was. That goes against what a lot of other band members have said about Aycock, who they say was unpredictable and might have been under the influence of. The FAA's toxicology analysis later verified that Aycock had that in his system, which supports the idea that he was drunk at the time of the incident. And then there's his past, which could influence how we see everything else. Andrew Aycock was not just a bus driver who worked as a pilot on the side. 6 years before, in the United Arab Emirates, he had been in a wreck that killed someone. There are still a lot of unknowns regarding that incident, but the fact that he had a death on his flying record is scary. It is even more troubling to learn that his aviation medical certificate had expired, which meant he was not legally allowed to fly that day. He shouldn't have been in charge, especially with people on board. But there is a darker theory that suggests this was not an accident at all. It has to do with Aycock's past. What did Andrew Aycock keep secret? Andrew Aycock, the guy at the center of it all, has remained a mysterious and divisive character since the terrible murder of Randy Rhoads. The official investigation generally just mentions the pilot or the bus driver. The report spoke a lot more about Aycock than just his name. There are many hypotheses about what really transpired in the sky above Leesburg, Florida, on that March morning in 1982 because he had a complicated and probably dangerous past. Let's get to the point. At the time of the incident, Aycock was officially working as Ozzy Osbourne's tour bus driver, not as a pilot. But he had worked in aircraft before. He had been a trained pilot years ago, but his aviation medical certificate had run out, so he wasn't allowed to fly passengers. Even more worrying, Aycock had been in a deadly crash in the United Arab Emirates 6 years before this one. There isn't a lot of information about that event. Yet the link is scary. It's too scary to ignore that 2 deadly plane crashes happened at different times but were caused by the same man. So, why was he flying a private plane that morning? Why did they let him fly a plane with people on board? Reports say that the Beechcraft Bonanza F-35 Iciosi was not his property. It was kept on the Flying Baron Estates airfield, and it was said to have been seized without the owner's permission. That alone shows a careless sense of entitlement or maybe a lack of concern for what happens next. The NTSB would eventually say that what he did was a bad decision, but for some others who knew him or saw him that night, bad judgment might not even begin to describe what he did. Toxicology findings showed anything that makes it hard to believe that this was merely an accident. At the time of the crash, a cock was in his system. This fact goes against Bob Daisley's idea that the flight was calm and under control until Rachel Youngblood's heart attack. Witnesses say that a cock had been partying all night before the incident, and they think he used drugs to keep himself going through the night. If this is true, it portrays a totally different picture. What of a man who was drunk and taking risks that could kill him while treating a deadly machine like a toy? But that's not where the gloom ends. One of the rumors that came out after the event was especially scary, and it has never been proven false. Several accounts say that Aycock's ex-wife was on the tour bus that morning. Some reports even say she was close to the car while the plane flew over it many times. People are starting to wonder if the antics, including the dramatic low passes, weren't done for fun or to wake up the crew. Could they have been aimed at her? Could this have been an act of rage that was meant to look like a stunt gone wrong? An unanswered inquiry. Randy Rhoads was never meant to just fade away in music history. His ascension was quick, and his impact was felt right away. But by the time he got on that deadly trip in March 1982, he was already thinking about a life outside of the heavy metal scene. He wasn't just a rock guitarist, he was also a composer in waiting and a student of classical music. A musician with discipline who wanted more than just fame. And in a tragic twist of destiny, everything came to an end just as he was getting ready to start a new chapter. Everyone says that Randy was getting ready to leave the touring life. After making 2 revolutionary albums with Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, he started telling friends and family that he wanted to go back to school. Not for the sake of publicity. Not for marketing. For love. He wanted to go to UCLA to get a master's degree in classical music, just like his mother did as a student and a teacher. Randy wanted to get back to the basics of what made him want to play guitar as a kid by studying theory, composition, and performance. He had already asked questions. His mother had already started talking to the university. Randy wasn't kidding or making up a story. He was really trying to stop living the life of a touring musician. This wasn't a breakdown or a burnout. It was a deliberate move towards something cleaner. He liked metal. He really liked Ozzy. But he liked music as a way to talk much more. Ozzy Osbourne's loss was more than just a business one. Randy had become the most important part of his comeback as a solo artist. A lot of people say that Rhoads saved Ozzy's career when he left Black Sabbath. His method of mixing classical music with metal helped shape a whole period of heavy music. But their relationship was more than just music and records. They got each other. They kept each other in check. Ozzy was a mess. Randy was the structure. Ozzy was full of energy. Randy was a quiet genius. The Prince of Darkness didn't hold back in his autobiography, I Am Ozzy. He said that God had given him Randy. He added that after Randy died, he almost gave up music for good. The sadness made it hard to move. Ozzy has lost a buddy as well as a bandmate. A brother, a friend. Ozzy stated, to get someone like Randy Rhoads to play on 2 albums and have them sound as good as they did when they were recorded is something else. No one knows where the man is today. And that's the concept that hurts supporters the most. What would have happened to Randy Rhoads? He died when he was only 25. Barely touching on his greatness. Musicians of all ages still say he had a big impact on them. Randy's name is still sacrosanct to everyone from Tom Morello to Kirk Hammett to Zakk Wylde to a lot of other underground guitarists. And it's not just because of what he played, it's also because of what he could have played. The songs he never penned and the albums he never made. The students he never taught. His future wasn't only bright. It was so bright that it hurt. Even though the music industry was sad about his death, it was also tormented by the fact that no one knew what had happened. What made Randy, who was scared of flying, get on that plane? Why did a bus driver with a revoked license and drugs in his system obtain access to a private plane? Why didn't anyone stop it? Why are there different stories of what happened in the last minutes of the flight? Why do those who know a lot about the situation, like Bob Daisley, come up with theories that go against the official story? But what if that day wasn't the only time the music world lost Randy? What if it also lost the truth? What truly went down that day? March 19, 1982, should have been an ordinary day. A break. To fix a bus and get back together before the next event. Instead, it turned into one of the darkest and most talked about days in music history. Randy Rhoads' death was more than just sad. There was a lot of confusion, contradictions, and questions that had been unaddressed for decades. And as the years go by, the mystery of what really happened in that cockpit continues to haunt fans, musicians, and people who were there. The tale was broken from the start. Official reports said it was pilot error, which meant bad judgment and flying too fast. Akak, the bus driver who became a pilot, flew his private plane over the band's tour bus several times, supposedly as a joke to wake up the sleeping crew. But that story immediately fell apart. People who saw it happen said something more scary. The plane was rocking excessively, there may have been a fight in the cockpit, and the people on board were acting strangely for a harmless joyride. That morning, Don Airey, the band's keyboardist, was outside the bus with a camera. His telescopic lens caught moments before the disaster, and what he observed didn't match up with the idea of a pilot being in complete control. The wings moved in strange ways. The plane was practically straight up and down. Inside the cockpit, movement seemed frantic and disturbing, as if there was a war for control. A few seconds later, the wing hit the bus. The plane broke apart, and a fireball killed 3 people, destroying both planes and dancers. A lot of other theories came in. Some people blamed Aycock's past, like a revoked aviation medical certificate, a crash that killed someone, and proof of his system. Others, like former Australian bassist Bob Daisley, said that Rachel Youngblood's health was to blame, saying that she had a heart attack in the middle of the flight and mistakenly put the dual-controlled plane into a dive. There were even rumors that Aycock's ex-wife was near the bus and that the flybys were aimed for her, making the crash a possible act of retribution hidden behind carelessness. These weren't just rumors in the tabloids. People who were close to the band and had lived with the results were the ones who said them. But without Randy, Rachel, or Aycock to speak, each rendition is just a patchwork of pieces. Half-remembered talks, fuzzy pictures, autopsy reports, and memories that are full with trauma. And maybe that's the most aggravating fact of all. There will never be an end. No clear answer, no confession, and no new proof. The only things left are the what-ifs. What if Rudy Sarzo had been the one to sit aboard that plane instead of Randy? What if someone had told Aycock not to fly? What if the band had gone a different way or put off the journey by an hour? What if Randy had said no? Ozzy Osbourne was heartbroken about what happened. Sharon Osbourne was left to try to keep the band together. The team had to go through the scene again for investigators and reporters, even though they were still in shock and guilt. Randy's family was heartbroken. His mother, his brothers and sisters, and his students. The world was sad when a rising star died before his best work was done. But Randy Rhoads became iconic even after he died. In 2021, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after he died. People who want to be musicians still study his guitar solos. You can hear his influence in styles that didn't even exist when he was alive. Randy left behind more than just music, he also left behind a mystery that may never be solved. One thing is for sure, though, the collision was either caused by drug usage, an unexpected medical emergency, or something much worse. Randy Rhoads shouldn't have been on that plane. What do you believe truly happened to Randy Rhoads? Was it a sad accident or anything else? Leave your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell because we have more unseen stories from rock history that you won't want to miss. And if you thought this one was intense, wait until you see the next one. It's even darker now.